She did not wait for him with impatience, but when he appeared she immediately became livelier. She enjoyed being left alone with him, and she enjoyed talking to him, even when he annoyed her or offended her taste and her refined habits. She seemed eager both to test him and to analyze herself. One day, walking with her in the garden, he abruptly announced in a surly voice that he intended to leave very soon to go to his father's place. She turned white, as if something had pricked her heart. She was surprised at the sudden pain she felt, and pondered long afterwards on what it could mean. Bazarov had told her about his departure without any idea of trying out the effect of the news upon her. He never fabricated stories. That same morning he had seen his father's bailiff, Timofeich, who had looked after him as a child. This Timofeich, an experienced and astute little old man, with faded yellow hair, a weather-beaten red face, and with tiny teardrops in his shrunken eyes, had appeared quite unexpectedly in front of Bazarov, in his short coat of thick grey-blue cloth, leather girdle and tarred boots. "Hullo, old man, how are you?" exclaimed Bazarov. "How do you do, Evgeny Vassilich?" began the little old man, smiling with joy, so that his whole face was immediately covered with wrinkles. "What have you come here for? They sent you to find me, eh?" "Fancy that, sir! How is it possible?" mumbled Timofeich. He remembered the strict injunctions he had received from his master before he left. "We were sent to town on the master's business and heard news of your honor, so we turned off on the way, well, to have a look at your honor. As if we could think of disturbing you." "Now then, don't lie," Bazarov cut him short. "It's no use your pretending this is on the road to the town." Timofeich hesitated and said nothing. "Is my father well?" "Thank God, yes." "And my mother?" "Arina Vlasyevna too, glory be to God." "They're expecting me, I suppose?" The old man leaned his little head on one side. "Oh, Evgeny Vassilich, how they wait for you! Believe me, it makes the heart ache to see them." All right, don't rub it in. Tell them I'm coming soon." "I obey," answered Timofeich with a sigh. As he left the house he pulled his cap down with both hands over his head, then clambered into a dilapidated racing carriage and went off at a trot, but not in the direction of the town. On the evening of that day, Madame Odintsov was sitting in one room with Bazarov, while Arkady walked up and down the hall listening to Katya playing the piano. The princess had gone upstairs to her own room; she always loathed visitors, but she resented particularly the new raving lunatics, as she called them. In the main rooms she only sulked, but she made up for that in her own room by bursting into such a torrent of abuse in front of her maid that the cap danced on her head, wig and all. Madame Odintsov knew all about this. "How is it that you are proposing to leave us?" she began. "What about your promises?" Bazarov made a movement of surprise. "What promises?" "Have you forgotten? You intended to give me some chemistry lessons." "Oh, it can't be helped. My father expects me. I can't put it off any longer. Besides, you can read Pelouse et Fremy, Notions Générales de Chimie. It's a good book and clearly written. You will find in it all you need." "But you remember you assured me that a book can't take the place of I forgot how you put it, but you know what I mean. Don't you remember?" "It can't be helped," repeated Bazarov. "Why should you go?" said Madame Odintsov, dropping her voice. He glanced at her. Her head had fallen on the back of the armchair and her arms, bare to the elbow, were folded over her bosom. She seemed paler in the light of the single lamp covered with a translucent paper shade. A broad white dress covered her completely in its soft folds; even the tips of her feet, also crossed, were hardly visible. "And why should I stay?" answered Bazarov. Madame Odintsov turned her head slightly. "You ask why? Have you not enjoyed staying here? Or do you think no one will miss you when you are gone?" "I am sure of that." Madame Odintsov was silent for a moment. "You are wrong in thinking so. But I won't believe you; you can't say that seriously." Bazarov continued to sit motionless. "Evgeny Vassilich, why don't you speak?" "What am I to say to you? There is no point in missing people, and that applies to me even more than to most." "Why so?" "I am a straightforward, uninteresting person. I don't know how to talk." "You are fishing for compliments, Evgeny Vassilich." "That's not my custom. Don't you know yourself that the graceful side of life, which you value so highly, is beyond my reach?" Madame Odintsov bit the corner of her handkerchief. "You may think what you like, but I shall find it dull when you go away." "Arkady will stay on," remarked Bazarov. Madame Odintsov slightly shrugged her shoulders. "It will be dull for me," she repeated. "Really? In any case you won't feel like that for long." "What makes you suppose so?" "Because you told me yourself that you are bored only when your orderly routine is disturbed. You have organized your life with such impeccable regularity that there can't be any place left in it for boredom or sadness, for any painful emotions." "And do you consider that I am so impeccable, I mean, that I have organized my life so thoroughly?" "I should think so. For example, in 5 minutes the clock will strike 10, and I already know in advance that you will turn me out of the room." "No, I won't turn you out, Evgeny Vassilich. You may stay. Open that window. I feel half stifled." Bazarov got up and pushed the window. It flew wide open with a crash. He had not expected it to open so easily. Also his hands were trembling. The soft dark night looked into the room, with its nearly black sky, its faintly rustling trees, and the fresh fragrance of the pure open air. "Draw the blind and sit down," said Madame Odintsov. "I want to have a talk with you before you go away. Tell me something about yourself; you never talk about yourself." "I try to talk to you about useful subjects, Anna Sergeyevna." "You are very modest, but I should like to know something about you, about your family and your father for whom you are forsaking us." "Why is she talking like this?" thought Bazarov. "All that is very uninteresting," he said aloud, "particularly for you. We are obscure people." "You regard me as an aristocrat?" Bazarov lifted his eyes and looked at Madame Odintsov. "Yes," he said with exaggerated harshness. She smiled. "I see you know me very little, though of course you maintain that all people are alike and that it is not worth while studying individuals. I will tell you the story of my life some time, but first tell me yours." "I know you very little," repeated Bazarov. "Perhaps you are right, perhaps really everyone is a riddle. You, for instance, you avoid society, you find it tedious, and you invited 2 students to stay with you. What makes you, with your beauty and your intelligence, live permanently in the country?" "What? What did you say?" Madame Odintsov interposed, eagerly. "With my beauty?"